Are you gonna behave and let me do a video? You gonna let me do a video? Okay, how do I want to start this? I want to talk about what going through therapy taught me and why I'm so in favor of it and why I am such a huge mental health advocate. But I think in order to properly do that, I need to rewind a little bit and kind of give you a little bit of backstory so you can understand why I'm making this video at all. So back when I was younger, about 15, 16 or so, I had some really bad things happen to some people that I cared about. Some really negative stuff go down around me. And I want to make sure that I emphasize the fact that it went down around me, nothing happened directly to me, because that's relevant and it comes back later on. But a lot of bad stuff happened. Some people that I cared about got hurt, and it just, the entire situation and experience sent me into a tailspin. It was just a really negative experience to go through at that age when you're kind of already going through a lot. And I shut down after that in a lot of ways. I shut down parts of myself in an attempt to get away from that experience and the negative fallout from it and the trauma, I guess, if you will. It was the first time in my life where I began to deal with anxiety. I had my first panic attack sometime in the year after that. And it was the first time where I understood a lot of really dark things about life that I hadn't understood up to that point. I don't know that I was necessarily depressed, but I was definitely in a depressive state. And I can remember just sitting and staring off into space, just kind of numb to everything that was going on around me. I kind of checked out of life for a little while, and it left me with some very real trust issues for quite some time, because I could no longer be sure if when I met someone they were being genuine and I could trust them and I could be sure of who they were saying that they were. I couldn't be sure that I could trust the situations that I was in, if I could trust my own instincts, because they had apparently led me so wrong. It was really, really awful, and I tried so hard to get away from that whole thing and to just shut it down and not think about it. I can even remember I stopped myself from dreaming for a while, and I'm such a vivid dreamer. You know that if you've been on this channel since the beginning, you know that I am obsessed with dreams, and I've always been such a vivid dreamer, but I shut down that part of myself because I would relive certain aspects of that experience in my dreams, and it was so painful that I didn't want to deal with it. So all of this carried on into my adult life, and it impacted every single relationship that I had, every single interaction with people that I had, and it felt like no matter how hard I tried to get away from that experience and everything that I went through afterwards, the harder I tried, the more it seemed to keep coming up. It was like I was in an emotional and mental Groundhog Day, which now, knowing what I know, makes perfect sense, because I understand now that that's what the universe does. When you are dealing with something, or rather I should say not dealing with it, when you are going through something traumatic and you are trying to tamp it down and get away with it, the universe will keep bringing that around and keep giving you opportunities to learn lessons and deal with it in a healthy way until you are able to do that and put it to rest or make friends with it or do something positive with it. So for a long time I wasn't able to do that. I didn't even know how to do that. And so I dealt with this for a really long time. And like I said, it impacted everything that I did and every single relationship that I had. And it wasn't even really up until maybe a couple of years ago that I felt like I was beginning to make some headway in healing. I felt like I was beginning to be able to pick through and work through these things. I did as much as I possibly could on my own, and I made a lot of progress, and I'm really proud of myself for being able to do that. But I began to realize that there were certain things, certain aspects of this whole situation that I wasn't sure how to handle. I was confused over why I was still, after all these years, it's been almost a decade, why I would still be feeling so much pain and anguish and trauma over something that didn't even actually happen to me. It just happened around me. I didn't understand why I was going through that. And so it was actually in the beginning of this year that I began to play around with the idea of maybe seeking out some sort of professional help, some sort of therapy or counseling. And it's so interesting because I can remember back when everything first happened, my parents obviously could tell that I was struggling. Anybody could see that, it was very clear. And my mom brought up the suggestion of me seeing somebody to talk things out, and I immediately shut it down. I was like, no, I don't need that, there's nothing wrong with me. You know, therapy's for people who have something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with me, I'm totally fine. And it's funny that that's the reaction that I would have, because I think it's kind of more old-fashioned reaction to the idea of therapy. I think it's kind of indicative of the attitude that used to exist around therapy and counseling and like mental health awareness as a whole. And it's interesting that I would have that reaction, and then looking back on that now from where I'm at this point, being on the total opposite side of the fence, it's interesting to see that progression. At any rate, I began to look into it, and the only problem was that therapy can be very, very expensive. And even though I make decent money, I wasn't sure if I wanted to cough up $100 at least every other week to talk to somebody, even though I knew this was something that I really, really wanted. So it was almost by happenstance that I stumbled upon a resource at a vet center, Veterans Assistance Center in a town over, where they offered mental health counseling. And I thought, well, you know, I'm not out of the military yet, but I'm within about 9 months of it at that point, and I feel like I need to try. Like, when I found out about it, a light bulb went off in my head, and I thought, I have to give this a try. I need to go check it out, like just follow it down. The worst thing that they can do is tell me, no, there's nothing we can do for you, and send me home. So I have to check this out. Like, there was a voice in me compelling me to do that. I knew that I needed to. And so even yet at that point, it's interesting because the hardest part of this whole experience as a whole was just making the decision to pick up the phone and dial the number and wait for it to ring, and then telling someone, hey, I would like to receive some help. I think I need some help. That was the hardest part, and it's so interesting that that was the most difficult part, but I guess that makes sense based off of everything I've always heard from other people going through similar situations. The hardest part is admitting that you are in that position, and I don't know why that is. Something with the human brain and maybe pride and the ego and I don't know what all, but that was the hardest part. And after that point, once I got through that step, even though it wasn't necessarily smooth sailing, things kind of evened out and it was mostly downhill from there. And I'm so thankful that I pushed myself to do that, and I went through that. I kept the fact that I was going to therapy pretty quiet. I only told a small handful of people. Obviously, Stuart knew because he's with me every single day, and he's an absolutely marvelous human being and was nothing but supportive and quiet in the whole thing, really, which just, I mean by that he stood by and let me go through this experience and listened to me and was just a quiet force of support, which is so powerful. And I really feel for people who don't have that, because it really emboldened me and made me able to do it. And then I told a few close friends, and it's interesting because I kind of got two responses from the people that I told. On the one hand, there was the support and the joy and the happiness for me that I was doing this, because a lot of my friends have gone through similar things themselves and felt the benefits of mental health counseling. But on the other side of it, and I want to be sure and emphasize that this was not the majority of the responses I received, this was like maybe 1 or 2%, but on the other side of that, there was almost a sort of guarded response where people, the person I told would kind of be like, oh, okay, and it was like I could see the wheels in their brain turning, and it was like they were thinking, so what's wrong with you then if you need mental health counseling? Because I didn't tell them why I was going. I didn't go into the whole long story because it's not really relevant. And I just think that it's interesting, and I bring that up for a very important reason, and that's because if I were the kind of person that really places a lot of weight on someone's opinion and how they feel about things and how they feel about me and what I do and all that stuff, having that sort of reaction to this kind of decision could have really hampered my willingness to go through with it. If that had come from a place where I really valued that opinion, it could have kept me from going through with it, which I think would have been a negative thing for me to do. Thankfully, there's like maybe 2 people whose opinions really make all that much of a difference to me at the end of the day. Everybody else is just really so much noise. So it didn't end up making a difference one way or the other, but it just struck me in that moment because I realized that if I were the kind of person who was more sensitive to outside influences and cared more about what other people thought, especially what the opinions of my friends are, that could have really done a lot of damage. And so I guess I bring it up as a reminder and a point of awareness for you, so that if you're ever in a situation where someone says something like that to you, says that they're going to go through this process or they're considering it, don't react that way, because it's not the right response. And you have to be careful, even though we are all going through our own life experiences, and our reactions every single time say more about us than they do about the person that we're reacting to. You still have to be careful, because in a situation like that, if there were an individual who genuinely needed that help, even more so than I did, for very real life-saving reasons, a response like that could keep them from going through with it, and that would be terrible. That's just something to keep in mind, and it's just an interesting little side note in this whole little journey of mine. Going through therapy, actually sitting with a therapist, was a very uncomfortable situation. It was different from anything I've ever experienced before, and I was not entirely prepared for the degree of personal honesty and like emotional and mental honesty that it took to go in there. And in a lot of ways it was a little bit traumatic at first too, because I had to go in there and tell him why I was there, explain my experience and what I had been going through and why I felt that this was something that I needed. And so in a way I went in there and relived things that, to be honest, I really haven't talked about since they happened. I've told maybe 1 or 2 people max since it happened, and that happened almost a decade ago. So to go in there and bring all of this up, it's been very close to my mind and very close to my heart, but I haven't put it into words. And the act of bringing that out and putting it into words, while it began to feel as if a weight was being lifted off of my shoulders, it was very raw, and I was taken aback by that, because even though I had suspected that that was what would happen, I don't think I expected it to come on as strong as it did. But it was all worth it, and I'm so happy that I put myself in that position, as uncomfortable and painful as it might have been in the moment, because each time I would leave each session I would feel a little bit better and a little bit better. And I had a couple of really major breakthroughs throughout this experience that taught me some things and gave me some insight into myself that I hadn't really had before. It put into words and brought to the forefront maybe things that I had instinctually known but hadn't put into words and brought to the surface, and that was really valuable. But the biggest thing that I got out of it, and this is going to sound so strange, is just sitting there and having someone tell me, you are justified for feeling how you feel. It's okay, and it makes sense. Because if you remember back in the beginning, I said that nothing happened directly to me. It all happened around me and to people that I cared about. And so throughout all these years, I felt like I couldn't own what happened to me. I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't express the fact that I was in pain because nothing happened to me. I got out of the situation physically unscathed, and yet I still felt so much pain, and it didn't make sense to me, and I felt like I couldn't talk about it, and I couldn't own it, and I couldn't make it mine, and I felt like I was just carrying around this stuff that didn't make any sense to me. And for whatever reason, just having someone tell me, you are justified, this makes sense, it's okay, it made all the world of a difference. And that was the moment where, for whatever reason, things just really clicked into place. And ever since then, it's been just a very different experience. Emotional and mental honesty and integrity are so important, because nobody is going to hold you accountable for those things other than yourself. And nobody is going to be able to fix you or help you grow through anything other than yourself, because you have to make that decision first and foremost. After that, other people can come in and they can aid you, but first and foremost, it's on you. And I have realized through this experience how important that honesty and integrity is. Honestly, it's a big part of the reason why I wanted to go through it, because I wanted to be able to put this whole situation and experience to rest and find peace within it, so that I can move on with my life and not feel like this is something that is continually weighing me down. And I wanted to do it not only for myself, but for the relationships that I have with the people around me. I think that most of us know when we've hit a point where we need to reach out for help, or when we need to consider an alternative. But I think that so much of the time the issue comes in when it comes to actually voicing that, putting it into words and bringing it into existence. Yes, I need help. Yes, this is something that I need to do. And then going out and doing it. I know that for me, I definitely felt that, and I felt it for two very real reasons. The first was out of fear for really how I would be perceived by the world, fear that word of this would get back to my job. Now I don't care. I could give a rat's ass, but at the time it was something that I was concerned about because the military is not the best about their attitude with mental health. It's gotten a lot better than it has, but it still has a long way to go. And especially in my job community, there has always been this attitude that you can't really go out and seek help for things unless something is really wrong. Like something had better be very, very wrong for you to go and ask somebody for help. And if something is really, really wrong and you do that, everyone is going to know about it because you're no longer going to be able to do your job. And I didn't want my mental health and the fact that I was trying to improve it get in the way of doing my job, because I knew that I was not in any kind of danger. I just needed a little bit of help working through some things, and I didn't want my desire to do that to get twisted and misinterpreted by someone who frankly doesn't have my best interests at heart. I didn't want to be perceived as someone who can't be trusted to do their job, someone who can't follow through on things and isn't a valuable member of the team. And it's sad that that's even an attitude that exists, but it's something that I've always been aware of from the first moment that I got into the job that I have. I've always known that that has existed. And so that was very real, and that's what kept me from trying to go through any normal avenue in the military to get assistance up until that point. And the second reason was just honestly because I was afraid of going through and reliving those things, and I was afraid that I would go through all that, bring all this stuff to the surface, talk about all this stuff, and it wouldn't change anything. Nothing would get better, nothing would improve. And the idea of doing that was absolutely nauseating to me, and I'm thankful that I pushed through that and I didn't let either of those things stop me. Fear of anyone finding out or fear of going through those things, because I would have hindered myself and kept myself from a really valuable experience. But I think it's important to mention those things because I think a lot of people go through the same things when it comes to reaching out for help. And I think that it's important that we address and talk about that so that people don't feel alone and they don't feel like what they're going through is such an isolating experience. Like, it's very normal to feel that way, and lots of people do. Everything that I've gone through in the last few months has been worth it. I have felt the benefits and the long-term ramifications exponentially as time has gone on. I feel much more calmer. The ground underneath my feet feels firmer somehow. I don't experience traumatic reactions to memories anymore. Things will still come up. I still might think about that experience or that time in my life once or twice a day or whatever. I might have a dream and somebody from my past will be in it, but it no longer completely derails me and ruins my day. I just acknowledge it and let it go and go about my day. And being able to do that is such a blessing. And I'm so thankful that I'm able to be at that point. I'm so thankful that I went through that and that's what I got from it, because that's exactly what I wanted. And it's so funny because going through it, I wasn't exactly sure at the beginning what I wanted out of it. I just knew that I wanted things to be better, and things are better. I wanted to share what I've been through and how powerful it has been and how much it's improved my life, so that maybe if you're watching this and you're in a similar position, you'll take those steps to do the same thing for yourself, because I think the world would be a much better place if people had a little bit more emotional integrity and honesty about themselves and the things that they've been through. Ultimately, I feel as if I have made friends, made peace with that point in my life. Because to be honest, I am who I am today because of that experience. As traumatic and terrible as it was very defining, and it completely shaped who I was and set the ground layer for who I am now. And I feel as if I am uniquely prepared now to deal with situations and people that other people might not be able to. I can approach things from a different perspective that other people might not be able to because of where I've been and what I know, and that is so valuable. And I'm so thankful and I don't regret anything. I, of course, wish that bad things didn't have to happen, but I think the best thing that you can do when they do happen is try to find the good and take that with you going forward. I am happy about the fact that I've been able to do that, and I'm happy about the fact that I've been able to apply what I've learned in my own life and use it to build myself up, because our experiences define who we are. It has defined who I am, and I love myself. Therapy is such a good thing, and I would encourage anybody and everybody to go through that. I think it's an incredible tool that should be used, and I think it is being used more and more, and I'm really happy about that. And now, knowing what I know, if I'm ever in a position in the future where I feel like I could benefit from some sort of counseling like that, I won't hesitate for as long. I won't beat around the bush and debate myself on whether or not I should, because I know what's waiting for me on the other side, and I'll just do it, and I'll be happy about it. And having that sort of confidence is really valuable. I want to make sure before I close this video out that I mention the fact that I was able to do all of this because of an initiative that was created through the VA, Veterans Affairs, and the vet centers. Basically, they have an agreement now with the Department of Defense where they're able to see active duty people as well as retired and separated people. In the past, vet centers were mainly for separated, retired military members. It was a resource specifically to help them. But I think somebody must have realized that there was a real opportunity to help more people, that active duty people need help and maybe they weren't getting it in the best way possible. And so now they've made it to where if you are an active duty member, you can go to a vet center and be seen and receive help. And the awesome thing about it is that it's never going to make its way back to your job. Nobody that you work with is ever going to know about it. It's completely confidential, and it's such a valuable resource, and I hope that people get word of that out. I hope that if you're in a similar situation, you're in the military, and you see this video, it'll encourage you to go and seek that out if you need it, because it's a wonderful resource. And I'm so thankful that somebody has made that push, because I don't know where I would be now if I hadn't found out about it. I feel like I was meant to find out about it at the time that I did, and I feel like it was meant to be, and I'm so thankful for it. That is pretty much it for this video. I wanted to share this experience and share this story and my reason for why I am so for mental health awareness and so, I guess, passionate about it, and why I am so thankful for resources like mental health counseling. And I hope that if you are on the fence about seeking that kind of help, if this will encourage you to go and get it. So thank you for watching. If you made it this far, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't. I always appreciate it. Turn on notifications so you'll know every single time that I post. All of my socials are in all of the places, and I will see you again soon for the next video. Ciao.